At our wedding, during the toast, my mother-in-law declared, "We are giving the apartment only to our son, so this impoverished farm girl won't get any part of it." Everyone fell silent. Then my father, a simple truck driver, stood up and said, "Now it's my turn to speak." At the Golden Coast restaurant, a festive atmosphere prevailed. White tablecloths, sparkling crystal chandeliers, tender music, all spoke of a celebration of love. Today, Lena and Max were uniting their destinies, and it seemed that nothing could mar this happy day. Guests arrived, congratulating the newlyweds, presenting flowers and gifts. Lena, in a modest yet elegant wedding dress from a bridal shop, felt a bit awkward under the intense gazes. The dress was rented, but she had dreamed of it since childhood, and Max did everything to make it a reality. Max, on the other hand, looked confident and calm in a pricey suit chosen by his mother, Vera. Vera, a tall, statuesque woman with a cold gaze, carried herself with the dignity of a queen, surveying everything around with a touch of disdain. She was a successful businesswoman, accustomed to luxury and attention. The wedding of her son in this upscale restaurant was more a tribute to her status than a sincere desire to share joy with the couple. Lena stole a glance at Max. He smiled at her, and her heart calmed slightly. She knew that their relationship was a test. After all, she and Max came from different social classes. She was the daughter of a simple truck driver, raised in the suburbs, knowing the value of every penny. He was the son of a wealthy and authoritative woman, used to luxury and license. But Lena believed in their love, in the idea that it was stronger than any prejudice. The hall began to fill with guests. Max's side consisted mainly of Vera's business partners, important and arrogant, dressed in expensive suits and dresses. Lena's side was her family and friends, simple and sincere, rejoicing for her with all their hearts. Among them stood her father, Boris, a strong man with kind eyes and a slightly weary gaze. He was dressed in his best suit, but it was clear that he felt somewhat uncomfortable in this luxurious setting. Finally, the official part began. The host delivered solemn speeches. Guests raised their glasses to the happiness of the newlyweds. Congratulations and wishes echoed. Lena and Max exchanged smiles and thanks, trying not to notice the tension that hung in the air. After several toasts, Vera took the floor. She stood up, elegantly adjusted her dress, and looked at Lena with a cold smile. "Dear guests," she began with her commanding voice, "we have gathered here to celebrate the wedding of my beloved son Max. I am very pleased that he has found a partner in life." She paused, as if choosing her words. "Of course, as a loving mother, I want the very best for my son. And so my husband and I have decided to give the newlyweds a wedding gift, an apartment in the city center." Applause erupted in the hall. Lena felt her cheeks burn. She knew about this gift. Max had told her, but she hadn't given it much thought. For her, their love and understanding were more important. Vera raised her hand, calling for silence. "But," she continued, her voice growing even colder and sharper, "I want to clarify one very important point. This apartment is given solely to my son Max so that, as they say, this poor village girl gets nothing." A dead silence fell over the hall. The applause faded as if it had never happened. Guests froze in shock, unsure how to react to such a rude and humiliating stunt. Max, sitting next to Lena, lowered his eyes to his plate, as if trying to hide from shame. He knew his mother could be cruel, but he did not expect her to allow herself such behavior at his wedding. Lena felt her heart constricting with pain and humiliation. Vera's words rang like a slap. She raised her head and looked at her mother-in-law. There were no tears or resentment in her eyes, only calm determination. She had no intention of justifying herself or humiliating herself in response. She knew her worth. Max continued to stare at his plate, as if searching there for an answer. He was confused, torn between his love for Lena and his respect for his mother. He understood that Vera had crossed all boundaries, but he did not know how to stand up to her. He had always been an obedient son, accustomed to carrying out his mother's wishes. But now, looking at Lena, he felt he had to make a choice. Silence hung in the air, so dense it felt like it could be cut with a knife. After Vera's words, thrown like ice into boiling water, everyone held their breath in anticipation. Max, like a chagrined boy, kept his gaze glued to his plate, as if he could find the answer to this unspoken question. What now? Lena maintained her outward composure, but her gaze, directed at her father, betrayed a storm of emotions. She knew her father, his few words, his honesty, his dignity. And now, in this humiliating moment, she sought in him support, a word that could cut through the fog. Boris, tall and stately despite the years spent behind the wheel of a truck, slowly rose from his seat. His movements were unhurried, deliberate. He wore a simple but neat suit, specially bought for this day. His eyes showed tiredness, but also an inner strength that refused to bow to circumstance. He threw a brief glance at his daughter, full of love and pride, and then stepped forward, walking to the microphone. Vera, like a queen on her throne, crossed her arms over her chest. In her eyes was that same superiority, the same readiness to protect her son's interests. She was certain this simpleton would start apologizing, trying to smooth things over. It didn't occur to her that such power could lie hidden in a man like Boris. He took the microphone in his large, calloused hand and gripped the cold metal. He cleared his throat, not to stall, but to steady himself. Then he spoke. His voice, usually soft and reserved, now rang out firm and sure, filling the entire room. "Good evening, dear guests," he began, scanning the hall. "I probably don't know how to give such beautiful and flowery toasts as some of you here. I'm just a simple man who spent most of his life behind a wheel. But I love my daughter. And today, I'd like to say a few words." He paused, and in that moment, an absolute silence swept the room. All eyes turned to him. Even Vera, who had expected weakness, now furrowed her brow, sensing the steel in his tone. "Since tonight is about revelations," Boris continued, "and since today it is customary to speak the truth, then I will speak too." His eyes locked onto Vera. "My daughter Lena grew up in a modest home. We didn't bathe in luxury or fly off to fancy resorts, but she was surrounded by love and care every day of her life. I worked day and night to give her all that I could, and I am proud of who she is today, honest, kind, and decent." He then turned his gaze to Max, who was now showing not just embarrassment, but something else, something deeper. "Respect." "Max," Boris said, "I'm glad you chose my daughter. I see that you love her, and I hope you'll honor her, the way I've always done." Vera gave a dismissive snort, but Boris didn't even glance at her. He wasn't speaking to her. He was speaking for Lena, for Max, for everyone in that hall who still had a heart. "In these past 20 years, he continued, I've known hardship. Long drives, lonely roads, broken down engines in the middle of nowhere. But I always knew, no matter how tired I was, someone was waiting for me at home. My Lena, my little girl. And for her, I'd do anything." He paused once more, letting the silence settle. It was so still now, so heavy with meaning, that even the faint clink of a glass being set down rang through the hall. "So here's the thing. I haven't accumulated great wealth. I haven't bought apartments in San Francisco, but I do have something. A house. Not a palace, of course, but a home. My own, a family home. I built it with my hands. Stone by stone, board by board." He smirked, looking at Lena. "There may not be moldings, Lena, forgive me, and the floor may not be parquet, but it's warm there. It's cozy. Guests are always welcomed, and people are respected there not for their money, not for their status, but just for who they are." He looked back at the hall. "And this house," he declared, his voice grounding firmly, "I am giving Lena and Max, completely, without any conditions or limitations, registered in Lena's name." Let them live, love, raise children. Let that be where their happiness is. A sigh rolled through the room. Some guests began to applaud. Some exchanged embarrassed glances. It was clear that Boris's words had struck a chord and awakened something real and human. Vera turned crimson. She clearly did not expect such a turn of events. Her carefully constructed plan, her display of superiority, all collapsed in an instant. She pressed her lips into a thin line and turned away, trying to hide her confusion. Lena looked at her father with gratitude and love. Tears welled in her eyes, but these were tears of joy, tears of pride for her father, for her family. She ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." Max had been sitting there like thunderstruck all this time. He looked from his mother to Boris and then to Lena. Confusion and bewilderment were in his eyes. It was as if he had woken up from a long sleep, realizing that he had been living not his own life, following his mother's dictation. He stood up and approached Boris, extending his hand. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for Lena, for the house, for being real." Boris shook his hand firmly. A flicker of hope glinted in his eyes. "You be real too, Max," he said. "Be a husband. Be the master of your home. Love Lena, take care of her, and everything will be fine." Max nodded. He felt something new, strong, and manly awakening within him. He no longer wanted to be a puppet in his mother's hands. He wanted to build his life himself, to make his own decisions. Vera observed them from her table. A shadow of regret flickered in her eyes, but she immediately pushed it away. She was not used to admitting her mistakes, not used to yielding, but deep down, she understood that she had lost. Lost not in money, not in position, but in something far more important. In humanity, in love, in respect. The orchestra played a cheerful melody. Guests began to dance. It seemed that the atmosphere in the hall became warmer, more relaxed. Boris's toast, his simple yet sincere gift, seemed to melt the ice that had gripped their hearts. Max and Lena also stepped onto the dance floor. They danced, looking into each other's eyes. In their dance, there was no ounce of deceit, no hint of pretense. Only love, hope, and faith in the future. Boris watched them and smiled. He knew that he had done everything right. He had defended his daughter, showing her that she was not alone, that she had a family that would always support her. And that was the most important and most valuable gift he could give her. He approached the table, took a glass, and raised it. "To the newlyweds," he said, "to love, to family." The guests echoed his toast. The clinking of glasses filled the hall. The celebration continued, but it was a different celebration now. A celebration of not wealth and luxury, but of love, respect, and human dignity. A celebration that would forever remain in the memories of Lena and Max. A celebration that marked the beginning of their real family life. They continued dancing, but their thoughts were already far away. In a quiet suburb, in a home built with love, to a home where true happiness awaited them. A home that couldn't be bought with any amount of money. A home that would become their true inheritance. The celebration went on, but the air felt as if it had been cleansed of the icy arrogance that Vera had brought. Now it felt warm here, a genuine and sincere unity. The music sounded happier, the faces of guests shone with smiles, and even those who had previously kept their distance, seemingly afraid to get dirty among the common people, were now lively, engaging in jokes and compliments towards Boris. Lena felt her shoulders straighten, and confidence swell in her chest. Her family wasn't poorer, they were just different. Yes, they did not have expensive cars or elite villas, but they had something much more valuable: honesty, kindness, and unwavering love for each other. In her father's eyes, she saw pride, the same kind she always felt looking at this strong and taciturn man. She approached him, hugged him tightly, and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Boris merely stroked her hair, saying nothing. Words were unnecessary. Everything was clear already. Vera sat at her table, as if turned to stone. Her usually haughty face expressed confusion, if not shame. She remained silent, avoiding gazes, and it felt as if her carefully built world, based on money and status, had cracked. Guests, who had once quivered in her presence, now bypassed her, preferring the company of more genuine and open people. Max, who had seemed lost and downtrodden all evening, now stood beside Lena, holding her hand. A spark of determination burned in his eyes. He felt the walls that his mother had built around him for years crumble. He no longer wanted to be a puppet in her hands. He wanted to be a man capable of making decisions on his own and taking responsibility for them. He looked at Lena. Her eyes shone with happiness and love. He realized that it was with this woman he wanted to spend his life, that her support and warmth were what he had been missing, and that no apartments or bank accounts could replace this simple human happiness. "Lena," he said softly, "let's go." Lena looked at him in surprise. "Where?" "Home," Max replied. Our home." "Enough of this hypocrisy." Lena smiled. She felt relief. She no longer wanted to remain in this gilded but cold hall. She wanted warmth and comfort, something genuine, not showy. Max approached Boris, firmly shook his hand, and said, "Thank you so much for everything." Boris nodded, understanding the young man. He saw Max transforming, awakening into a real man. At the end of the celebration, the newlyweds approached Vera. Max leaned down to his mother and said, "Mom, we're leaving. Don't take it the wrong way." Vera lifted her tearful eyes to him. There was none of her accustomed arrogance. Only pain and confusion remained. "Where are you going?" she whispered. "Home," Max replied, looking her firmly in the eyes. He didn't elaborate. She understood everything. Lena merely nodded slightly to Vera as a farewell and took Max's hand. They exited the restaurant under the surprised gazes of the guests. Outside, a car awaited them, which Boris had ordered to show them the house. The driver opened the door for them, and they settled inside. As the car drove off, Lena pressed against Max and closed her eyes. She felt happy and free. "Are you regretting it?" she asked quietly. Max hugged her tighter. "Not at all," he answered. They traveled down the night road away from the bright lights of the big city toward a new life. Ahead of them lay a modest but cozy house built by a loving father. A house where they could build their own family, based on love, respect, and understanding. A house that would be their true refuge from hypocrisy and lies. The wedding concluded not with a grand fireworks display or expensive gifts, but with the moment when a real family was born. The moment when two young people chose love and loyalty, rejecting imposed stereotypes and prejudices. The night was dark, but ahead shone a flicker of hope. A hope that they could build their happiness regardless of any hardships. A hope that Vera would one day understand her mistake and accept her son's choice. A hope that their home would be a place where love and respect always reign. When they arrived at the house that Boris had built, Lena gasped in delight. The house was small, but very cozy. It was built of wood, painted in light tones. A small garden surrounded the house, filled with flowers and fruit trees. Boris was waiting for them at the door. "Welcome home," said Boris, standing on the threshold. Lena and Max entered the house. It was warm and bright inside. They looked around. The house was equipped with everything necessary for life. A cozy living room with a fireplace, a spacious kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. Everything was made with love and care. "It's so cozy here," Lena said. "Thank you, Dad." "Live here happily," replied Boris. "This is your home." Max hugged Lena and looked into her eyes. "We will be happy," he said. "I promise." They spent the night in Boris's house. They talked for a long time, laughed, and reminisced about the past. They felt closer to each other than ever. The next morning, Boris left for work. Lena and Max were left alone in the house. They walked out to the garden and began strolling between the trees. The sun shone brightly, and birds sang their songs. "It's so nice here," Lena said. "I truly feel at home." Max hugged her shoulders and pulled her close. "Me too," he said. We will live here long and happily. They stood that way, embraced, gazing at their new home, a home that had become a symbol of love, loyalty, and hope. A home where they would start their new life. Suddenly, Max's phone rang. It was Vera. Max looked at Lena, then answered the call. Yes, Mom. Vera's voice sounded uncharacteristically quiet and timid. Max, she said, I wanted to apologize. I was wrong. Max was silent. He didn't know what to say. I just wanted you to be happy, continued Vera. But I only made things worse. Mom, said Max, it's okay. The main thing is that you realized it. I want you to come over, Vera said. I want to get to know Lena better. Max looked at Lena. She nodded in agreement. Okay, Mom, Max said. We'll come over. He hung up and looked at Lena. What did she say? Lena asked. She apologized, Max replied. And she wants us to come over. Lena smiled. Maybe everything will still work out, she said. Max hugged her tighter. I hope so, he replied. I really hope so. They stood that way, embracing and looking at their new home, a home where they would start their new life. A home where, perhaps, everything would still work out. And looking at each other, their eyes reflected gratitude and love. Love that, despite all hardships, prevailed.